Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson. Happy podcast day. Happy recording day. I'm fired up. No, doing good, man. Had a fantastic weekend, like none other. Beautiful weather. Uh, cicadas have about moved on. We had a tough day on the lake yesterday with Cody and fishing. We'll get into that story in a little bit if you so choose. But ready to talk a little Great American Bash when I was reading the research. I don't know if I had some flashbacks, good or bad, but it's going to be a fun one today. And you're settled into your new digs. It seems like it's been a minute since me and you've chatted.
Yeah, last week I had excavators behind my house in Huntsville. Of course, I moved to the lake over here in Gunnersville, but my old pal Cassio was holding down the fort up there for me at the old Huntsville house that you have sometimes referred to as the Conradison. And he's been enjoying the pool there, hanging off the side of the mountain with his dog, and probably having more fun than we can talk about in a public forum.
I would imagine.
But he has I think the only way to describe it is like a dinosaur dump, because inside of him hanging out over there like 6 weeks, he had completely blown the sewer lines in the yard behind the house. So I had to have like Tonka toys back there, like giant excavators and dump trucks. And I mean, it was a all hands on deck. We need nighttime lighting rigs, whatever it took. When that cement poured out of Cassio.
Well, I just want to ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
I'm not putting you on the stand or anything like that, but this is just kind of peeling the layers on your back. How long have you lived there?
June of 2012. So we'll call it 12 years.
12 years. And how long you and Megan been married?
6 years.
Yeah. Okay. So half of the 12 years you've had two people in there. Mm-hmm. Would you say over, I don't know if it's a week, we can probably bring it down, but you've probably had a lot of house guests is where I'm going with.
Yes, so many. I mean, I've got,
I don't know how many times I've stayed there, and I would stay 2 nights at a time.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I had the 2 spare bedrooms downstairs and 2 spare bedrooms upstairs. And then of course we've had some couch surfing over the years and those 8 recliners in the home theater. And
parties.
Dude, so many. The Halloween parties were legendary. Over 100 attendees.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine how many BMs just in that 124-hour period?
So much.
So 12 years. And I mean, I don't even know how to, so 365, 720, 12. I mean, we're in the 10,000s. We're not in thousands. We're 10 to 20,000 of flushing commodes.
Yes. I mean, let's call it what it is. Yeah.
BMs, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Over 12 years. So how long has Cassio been in there?
He's been in there maybe 5-6 weeks. And boy, he slid right in my DMs to tell me that his BMs are going to cost me a stack of checks. And it has. It's been very expensive being his friend. And I mean, I don't even know how a one man band.
So there's, in biblical speaking, 40 days into the wilderness. And, there's a historical importance. So Cassio's 40 days into the Conradison wilderness, I guess you could say, not a miracle. I think it'd be a disaster.
We're talking well over $10,000.
You're kidding me.
No, well over $10,000. Just so my friend could take a shit.
For 40 days.
I mean, what's he eating?
Good Lord have mercy.
I mean, it's like he's got his own cement mixer. I don't know what's going on. I'm concerned.
Oh, there's a t-shirt coming somewhere.
So keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Of course, we're talking about WCW 2000 today. That's our real topic. But before we do that, I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, I saw that you guys have announced some wrestling tie-ins for Shoes Baseball. Now that's coming in September. We'll talk about that in the future. But I think like right around the corner, you guys have got big firework displays. And I mean, there's lots of fun stuff happening at shoesbaseball.com right now.
Off and running. I'm telling you, we have not slowed down. Shoes Baseball kicked off. My man, Jamie Toole, and the just the entire Shoes baseball organization. Couldn't be prouder of them. Kicked off all the sponsors coming in. We've got sponsors lined up for the Capital City Clash happening September 21st. Fireworks this Saturday night. We won't get into any hardcore plugs or nothing like that, Connie. I'm just super excited for everybody. We had the Cubs Cards Legends Classic that did some record numbers for us, and the city's really behind us. And we're off and running, my man. We are off and running. I could not be more proud to be a part of the association, team, and the Prospect League. And Connie, I never dreamed a couple of years ago that it would turn into something like this. But who would have thought? Who would have thought? All good, man. I appreciate you mentioning.
I'm glad to hear it, and I can't wait to get up there and finally catch a game. This is going to be the summer where I make it happen, and you should too. Tickets are on sale now at shoesbaseball.com. A lot of chatter, between the legends and between wrestling and the fireworks, and man, it's more than just baseball. It's a family fun experience. It's about the community, and it's about having a good time and America's pastime. So go check it out if you haven't already. Even if you're just a casual baseball fan, man, it's just a fun day at the park. And it's really affordable and an excellent way to have fun with the whole fam. Shoesbaseball.com. And speaking of the whole fam, you teased it a minute ago. The most popular kid in all of school, like he just won the award, biggest and best draw, biggest baby face, most over.
You call it best draw.
Yeah. I mean, he's won it all, all around charismatic. I mean, this is he would have cleaned if Dave Meltzer put out a rag sheet about what all was going on in middle and northern Tennessee, he would have just cleaned up in the Dave Meltzer Observer Award. But you said he had a bad day on the lake. Now I'm curious, does that mean that you beat him fishing or he couldn't? I mean, what was going on with my man Codes this week?
Well, just real quickly, Dynamite last week, Jay Lethal was in a match?
I did.
Okay. Did he need to get his hand raised or not? He didn't. He just let you in on that. Well, Cody pointed out to me, when he manages Jay Lethal, Jay gets his hand raised.
Oh.
So we'll just leave that right there. So that was pointed out to me last Wednesday night. But we'll get into yesterday on the lake in the late afternoon, early evening. We got a line wet. We got a couple of lines wet. The Queen was down there. She was catching fish as well. Conrad, I kid you not once, but twice. So yesterday, Cody, we're going to get worms, and we walk down the aisle at Walmart, and we stumble upon catfish bait. You ever seen catfish bait, Conrad?
I have, yes, sir.
Yeah. So we got us a package of that. Got the line wet. Conrad, I'm not kidding. Not once, twice. Big old catfish hit his line, and I mean snapped it. The look on Cody's face, I think that's the first time that he's really been into it and knew that, oh man, Cody, go, your line, get it. He yanked back on that thing like a pro, started reeling, and pow, as that fish came out of the water. So it was not a stick fish or anything like that. We saw the fish come to the top of the water, it fought, and boom, popped the line. That happened twice, about 30 minutes apart. So he was just getting his head back in the game and had almost forgot about it, and boom, happens again. So he's ready to tackle him again today, Conrad. That's all I got to say. He was madder than tough day on the water. And you know me, I didn't joke with him, give him a hard time or anything. Conrad, he was.
I think he might be onto something. I just looked this up.
Oh boy.
I don't think Jay Lethal has won a match in AEW this year. I know he's won some on Ring of Honor. And of course, every time he steps out, whether he's in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or he's in Calhoun, Georgia, I mean, the man's on tour, even in Albany, New York, he's picking up wins left and right. And I've noticed the pattern, and that's what great managers like Cody do. They see, hey man, my guy's in the slump when he's on AEW television. But when he's out here working for Ring of Honor or any of the other great promotions around this globe.
Pro Wrestling Inc.
Yeah.
That's where Cody led him to victory.
Well, I mean, of course he did. I mean, he just continually does that for everybody that's on his watch and on his roster. I just think, we need to get Cody an AEW contract. I need to see that graphic that says Cody Angle is all elite
Which is,
And if we could get that going, I think we could turn Jay Lethal's luck around because it can't be just a coincidence. I think there's a mental block, and with some proper coaching from Cody, we can get Jay Lethal back on the right track.
you know what, my man Coaster what a couple of weeks back. I don't know if we've talked about in Vegas, the 6-man tag that took place. Have we talked about
We have
that?
not. No.
Oh, Cody. I said, Cody, that's Brian Danielson. I said, I think he's maybe, if not the best, he's currently right up there, top 5, top 3, maybe. Like, man, cut me some slack. He's like, my gosh, took a W. You took a L to him. So Cody wasn't real impressed with my showing on Collision as well. So he drives a hard bargain, Connie.
Well, I'll tell you this. I can't wait until he comes have a, as we used to say in the South, a spend the night party. You remember about those spend the night party? We need him to have him spend the night party down here, and I'm gonna show him you beating up on Beetlejuice, and I think he wrestled China once. I don't remember the finish, but I'd love to just get his take on that.
Oh man, a lot of fun. You're too much. You
Uh,
just
Hey, we're gonna get Jay Lethal back on the right track. Tony Khan, you know what to do. Cody Angle is all elite. Hey, we missed last week. Of course, I had all the Tonka toys going on, but we are back, and we are going to have some fun today talking about WCW in the year 2000, the Great American Bash 2000 specifically. Now, last month we talked about you winning the title at Slamboree, and we also watched you and Sting in the main event on the Nitro the night after. But now we're entering well, an era where Tony Schiavone referred to WCW as a coffin on roller skates, easily one of the worst times in WCW history. And at this point, both Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff are, at least for now, in control. So, as a reminder, just to add some context, Eric gets sent home in September of 99, October of 99. Here comes Vince Russo. Right around that same time, here you come. Maybe you were still covered in some household powders and whatnot. I'm not sure. But you're back and you're right into the main event picture. Now, it doesn't go swimmingly well with Russo. He leaves. There's a little bit of controversy. They're asking for Bischoff to come back, and it almost becomes like this new Mega Powers team, or so they hoped. Hey, Vince Russo had all this success with Vince McMahon's WWF. Eric Bischoff had all this success with Nitro and the NWO. Let's put them together. And a lot of people felt like, man, that could really work. And now we're going to talk about the results of that. Everyone's kind of waiting for Goldberg's return. That is going to happen at Great American Bash, but there's rumor and innuendo that perhaps the powers that be like the idea of turning Goldberg heel. I'm not sure that that was the best idea. What'd you think of that?
so I appreciate you doing the context because I actually had to do that myself to try to put the months. So we're talking spring of 2000, right?
Yeah.
Um, I do remember hearing the I don't want to call it chatter. Shout out Dave Green, but no, just the rumblings. That would be a more appropriate term. And it it it. I mean, it's easy to say now, but I remember thinking back then, Jeff, just shut your mouth. That ain't gonna work. Um, his the character of Bill Goldberg, as we all know, got over by being just a one man wrecking crew. And I don't want to just say in short matches, but for explanation purposes, that's kind of. I mean, he had a couple of matches that would had some length, but his whole persona, his mindset, um, he didn't really have any heel traits. And so I said, all right, this is going to be an uphill climb, and he's got to do a lot of his work with his mouth because I don't see him and didn't need to cower off or chicken shit or even really cheat. So the positioning of everything, how was he going to get across the goal line to really get people to pay money to see get his ass kicked? I just didn't see that. But look, I knew, and that was kind of a running theme through all this research that I read, Conrad. Thank God I wasn't the final say so in this. So, just Shivani's coughing on skates, coughing on wheels. when you kind of look back on this whole era and the stuff that we're going to kind of talk about today, and I know context is king and being in the moment, man, oh man, there are some god awful decisions made during this run. And one, let me ask you a question: what month was Great American Bash?
This was June. As folks are listening to this, we are on the exact 24-year anniversary, June 11th, 2000.
So April was
Spring Stampede, and that's where they sort of strip all the belts, and we have like the big boom. And then
that's where I won the title
s-
in Spring Stampede in Chicago. Then the
and
next month was May,
Slamboree is like that triple cage with Arquette and all that.
Kansas City. Yeah, and so so now we're really into we're only 3 months into the Bischoff.
Oh, yeah, actually a little less. I mean, we're probably
Less.
2 months in, but it's already just kind of a mismatch. And I want to add some context because I feel like a lot of times people, and I get it. I mean, but back then, the prevailing argument was, oh, well, Goldberg's just a stone cold ripoff. And I think they said that because he wore black trunks and he wore black boots and he was bald and had a goatee. To me, that's where the similarities end. And when we were doing our Top Guy weekend thing for our super supporters over at adfreeshows.com last year, when we did our big get together, we booked a wrestling card and we had a lot of great minds in the same ring at the same time.
Had a blast.
But right before that happened, I got to pick Kevin Sullivan's brain and we talked about Goldberg and he made it clear, no, I wasn't trying to pattern Goldberg after Steve Austin. I was trying to pattern Goldberg after Mike Tyson. And when you really think about the quick, short matches and how he was finishing people right away, and he did have the short boots like Tyson did, and he had on the MMA gloves. So it's not really a boxing glove, but it's as close as he can get. And he didn't talk, and he just looked scary and intimidating and came and ate people up. It clicked for me like, oh man, that was right in front of us. I mean, if he would have put the black towel over his head, which he didn't because Taz was doing that, but if he would have done that, it maybe would have clicked a little faster. But even like the security walk from the back from the locker room with the security guards, that's what you would see for Tyson for his big walk. That just clicked for me talking to Kevin Sullivan last year. Did you make that Tyson comparison back then?
No, I definitely did. I'd love to say that I did, but I always thought that because obviously I was at WWF at the time, WWE, is that Steve's emotional connection with the audience was I'm the working man. I'm the beer drinking, hard charging. I don't want to say 9 to 5, but that was over in abundance. I'm going to drink beer with you. And most importantly, is that this city slicker New York promoter who had been an announcer and he was the son of a promoter, but had been an announcer for years and years and years, did a very controversial finish. And in front of everyone's eyes, they pulled the curtain back that was done in, oh, wait a minute, although it was real or wasn't it real, but he became the Wizard of Oz in a lot of ways became reality. And that's the character of the chairman, Vince McMahon. And I always looked at Steve and Vince, the yin and the yang of that, all of that was obviously we know box office records and the storyline and the endless amount of ups and downs and just everything that goes with that. I don't want to go down in a rabbit hole on that, but man, it in a lot of ways, I think that one storyline it took the company public, or it exploded things because Stone Cold was hot, but when they did that, then it really got hot. Goldberg was a one man wrecking crew, and his character was so different that he was just in and of itself a one man badass wrecking crew. And I didn't see any similarities in their promo skills or even their in ring work, other than ball headed, what you just said, kind of check the boxes off the appearance. That's where the similarities stop.
We mentioned in the past too that Randy Savage, when we did our Randy Savage episode not too terribly long ago, he is going to come back to WCW to take part in a match at the Mid South Coliseum. It's like a 40-man battle royal. And here's what was written. On Tuesday in Memphis, Bischoff won over a lot of younger wrestlers at a team meeting in front of everyone, including Hogan and Savage. When he said everyone in the room has to have no problem doing jobs because everyone in the room at some point is going to be asked to do a job for someone else. And basically asked if anyone has a problem with that to please speak up. Nobody did, and Bischoff said he was happy that nobody had a problem. Now listen, this seems like a little thing, but I just want to add context to this. There had been a lot of reporting at the time that this guy didn't want to put over that guy, and that guy didn't want to lose in this circumstance or in this town, or this became more of a thing. I think that it's just not talked about as often these days. I know for sure it still happens, but it's just not talked about as much. But I wanted to know from your perspective, do you remember hearing that? And did it make a difference that the tippy top guys like a Hogan and Savage were all in the meeting at the same time?
Well, I got a question to ask you. Why was Savage out of contract? Because did I read that in research?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. His contract expired and he was not offered another one or didn't resign. I mean, at this point, WCW is losing cash, so maybe they just couldn't come to terms on money. But he's out of he'd finished up and he came back and they paid him
and,
handsomely for this one off.
and do we know why? Did has Eric on any or Eric or Tony or any other folks? Because
Eric
that was
Eric was gone when all that happened. So that's probably a question better for Vince Russo, but he was sort of in and out at the same time.
yeah. Would have been a
WCW at the time doesn't have any real leadership that's been in
Yeah, I was going to
place.
say, so that's a Bill Bush decision,
Yes, yes,
probably. I don't want to go on record.
yes.
Probably. Okay. Yeah. 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 Because I had that. I'm like, why was Savage even there? Because I remember we touched on the battle royal. But with all that being said, I the I'll kind of call them rah rah speeches. Um, Conrad, I think we probably talked about this multiple times on here. I have never been a fan of the rah rah speeches because it's almost as if you're campaigning for something, and the nature of the beast. Um, I think going back to the Jerry Jarrett or Christine Jarrett or maybe even Jerry Lawler, that the wrestler will kind of put up a BS flag or be a little of sketchy, like, what's all this about? I can remember me and Dixie having conversations. So I'm just say, Dixie, hey, it's, ultimately, if you want to have a team meeting, have at it. But if you expect for it to be super productive, that's probably not going to happen. It's on a case by case basis. If you think it's going to serve a purpose, do it. And I would imagine that's what, Vince and Eric wanted to try to put a flag in the ground saying, hey, we know there's been issues with guys doing jobs, but I just think at the end of the day, those kind of speeches can only serve you so well. I'm not saying they're useless, but they can only serve you so well. What the only way to get folks' attention is, oh, you don't want to do a job? There's the door. Goodbye. And we're not going to send you home and get paid. We're going to send you home and you're not getting paid.
Let's talk about somebody who didn't get sent home, but maybe should have been. I don't know exactly what happened here, but there's a famous story that there was a crew member who worked for the company named Daryl Miller. He's at a Thunder show and he's 35 years old, and around 10:15 at night. So after a show, I guess as the story goes, he's carrying carpet in the back, and Buff Bagwell, Lex Luger, and Miss Elizabeth are blocking the door he's going through. As it's written in the Observer here, the crew member asked them to move so he could get what he was carrying through the exit door. Bagwell told him he was conducting business. Words were exchanged, and allegedly Bagwell hit the crew member. Do you remember this story or hearing about this?
I vaguely remember that, but it doesn't surprise me at all. And look, we've all done dumb things, and I'm at the very top of the list. This is this with Mark especially. I mean, hair trigger temper. And after the show, not an excuse, kind of a reality. You're tired and you're ready to get out of there. But the reality is that the crew, they want to get out of there too, but they've probably got 2, 3, 4 hours of work in front of them. So they're blowing and going. And so talent leaving the building, there's always kind of been potential blowups that usually, if security stays around and kind of guides talent where to go and where not to go, just because the talent's in and out, they're in and out of those. Dave Silva, one day I'm going to teach you what an elephant door is, but they're in and out of elephant doors. And look, I can just see Buff and Lex just walking out of the Coliseum and not paying any attention. And a guy's probably at the end of his rope. Maybe he's pissed off or whatever. But I do remember vaguely hearing this. And when I heard about it, I'm like, it doesn't surprise me at all, Mark. He's got a hair, just a temper at the drop of a hat.
Let's talk about where we are. On Monday Nitro, after the Thunder show that was at the Mid South Coliseum, here's what's written. WCW's world title may change hands once or twice per week, and Ric Flair may be 51 years old, but the combination of both led WCW to a more competitive Monday night than usual. Raw finished up with a 6.16 rating and a 9.3 share. Nitro ended up with a 3.11 rating and a 4.7 share. The head-to-head was 5.84 for Raw and 2.89 for Nitro, so it was still a 2-1 margin. So that's a big deal that you're starting to gain a little bit of ground. And I know that, we always talk about context, and we say on Eric's show all the time, context is king. We've probably used that word 4 times here. So I know it's easy to take a look at 5.84 to 2.89 and say, whew, WWE was kicking WCW's ass. Let's pretend for a minute that WWE doesn't exist. We're not making a comparison. We're just looking down the barrel at our own product. Hey, a 2.89 and a 4.7 share, that'd be high fives in any era for professional wrestling.
Network executives high fiving all around at TBS or TNT or both. Obviously, that takes me back to the Spike days. We were that time. I think WWE was doing either 3 to 5 times of the number, but USA, the number one entertainment network, Spike. I think we were around the 20, 25 range, but there was so many. That's when, the cable television, I'll call it the golden era, if you will. But people would, not near like they do today on all the social media platforms, but the write-ups, it would just be, oh man, WWE there. But you hear a Spike TV executive or a research or an ad sales guy, and they looked across their 7 days of programming, and every Thursday night they could get that kind of number. And I'm sure TBS and TNT, which goes to back to the big picture. And I know Who Killed WCW. I haven't seen any of that yet, but the day WCW went off the air, the ratings, were they great? No, but they were still at the very top of the network's programming. Which begs the question, but you're the more expert on that. Have you seen it, Conrad? Who Killed WCW?
I have seen it, and we're actually doing live reaction shows every Tuesday night after it airs. So as you're listening to this later tonight, Eric Bischoff and I will be live at 83weeks.com breaking it down. We need to do one of those on your show too, on your channel too. I think what would be fun is once it's all done and you've had a chance to see all 4, maybe we can get everybody together and do some sort of a round table or some sort of a catch up and do it on our YouTube channel here at myworldpod.com. So if you haven't already, go hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. Jeff and I are going to be joined by some folks, and we're going to talk a little bit about Who Killed WCW at the conclusion of the 4th episode. So stay tuned for that.
And Conrad, at the very top of this show, we usually kind of talk baseball, and I always love that. And we kind of talk about upcoming events. Triple Mania is Sunday in Tijuana.
Wow, I forgot about that. You're fixing to go take over.
And as you're listening to this, I'm going to be in Tuesday. I'm headed down to Juarez, which is basically a border town of El Paso. I'm there tomorrow for a TV taping. So we're going to have to do some My World stuff on YouTube on that as well. So
yeah, don't miss the behind the scenes look at Triple Mania. If you're out of the loop, that is sort of the Mexican equivalent of WrestleMania. And it's happening this weekend. And of course, just like everything else in wrestling, as you look, not only is Jeff Jarrett on the top of the card, he's right in the middle of the thing. I mean, where he belongs. So be sure to check that out. I'm sure it's going to be on Fight and everywhere else that you enjoy watching AAA. And if you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. You don't have to understand all the storylines and all the characters. It is different than what you've grown up with in American professional wrestling, a spectacle like no other. But man, just wildly entertaining, super fun. Some of the most fun times I've ever had at a live show were at a lucha show. And I was late to the party on that, and we're glad to support all things AAA and Dorian here on My World.
Yeah, my man Sottenham getting him some reps. He is taking AAA by quite the storm. But yeah, so we go to Juarez tomorrow or Tuesday as you're listening to this, and Saturday, Tijuana. Um, Tijuana, well, Triple Mania, Triple Mania, Tijuana. And then the final episode of Triple Mania this year is in Mexico City in August. So we'll see how things work out. But back to our My World, how'd that get in that rabbit hole?
Who knows? Who knows?
WCW. Yeah. We were talking about ratings.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Ratings are strong here still for WCW, just not as good as WWE. We
Yep.
had 8,550 fans in Biloxi. Now, that sounds like a heck of a house until you realize that less than 2,900 of them were paying fans. So the gate is only $63,000. Man, you want to talk about the worm turning. I mean, this is a company that was routinely selling out domes for weekly television. And I mean, they had 40,000 people in domes on multiple occasions, paid fans. And now, less than 2 years later, we've got less than 2,900. It's hard to wrap your head around how quickly it turned, right?
when I saw the stats, I just wonder how the heck get 4 or 5,000 freebies out.
I was
Ticket.
wondering the same thing. I don't understand how it's even possible.
I don't. I just wonder if that's. Wonder if it's accurate. Lord knows, there's never been anything inaccurate in the world of social media.
Well, listen, I know that you say that from the standpoint of someone who grew up in the business that was being operated on a P&L. That's not what this is. This is a television company, so they may have made the decision, hey, we want it to look good on TV. We don't give a rip how much money we make on the ticket sales. We're trying to sell television ads. Either way, though, the result is a pretty memorable moment on the show. David Flair and Vince Russo are going to go to Ric Flair's house and jump up and down on his bed, and drive across the lawn and steal some of his robes. And eventually Rick comes out and challenges David to a match. And you come out instead and hit him with a guitar and put him in the figure four to set up a match later on that night. Along the same lines, we would see Kevin Nash almost kill Mike Awesome with a power bomb off the stage through a table. Without DDP, something tough may have happened there.
Jesus.
But finally, we get you and the Nature Boy in the main event. And Flair is working with just one arm. He needs shoulder surgery that might happen later in the month, but he's working in street clothes. And it's written here in the Observer, they wanted him to wrestle in trunks since he was winning the world title, but it was one of those communication breakdowns. And since they never told him, he didn't bring any trunks. But he still had the only good match and great interview on the show, and the two highest rated segments. While half the young guys who can't draw ratings, have good matches, or even dress well think he is the one who's killing the ratings. So, of course, Meltzer is giving a big high five to Ric Flair. We know that Ric's super talented. He did have a great promo. He did have some of the highest rated segments. You did get a chance to wrestle him. But I'm sure even you had to be a little disappointed. Hey, I get to wrestle Ric Flair for the world title. That's cool. But in street clothes, how disappointed were you?
Oh, God. That we could probably come up, and certainly on My World or What Happened When or 83 Weeks or any of your pods that kind of dive into the WCW history. But to go back in time, Conrad, had we had a camera that, because everything was up in the air, this was, I'm sure Russo and others, and because I think there was a creative team by this time and they had talked about it and all this. But when they came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to switch the title," right? Okay, now do realize that I just won it, and we're already going to flip it. Where are we going with this? And it was said, "Oh, I think it was like you're probably going to win it back, or you are going to win it back." And I'm thinking, why are we switching it? What is the upside here? What are we doing here? So to kind of have that conversation, okay, look, I'm not the boss here. I'll go out. Rick's super over. I'll just bounce around for him, and we'll have a hell of a match. And even Meltzer, he didn't want to give me any credit, which is but yeah, Rick's talented, but to work in dress shoes over 1 minute is an impressive feat. But when I found out, which was after the conversation switching the title, it was just like, oh my god, like how? And I get it. I mean, but whatever the communication or whatever it may be,
Well,
and
listen,
don't you?
I'm not trying to wag my finger at Rick. Of course, everybody knows he was my favorite wrestler as a kid, and but it's still just crazy to me to think that an old veteran, the old veteran, he's at the building without his tights, and
The old
that makes me think he was in a pissing contest with WCW still. He's not super thrilled, maybe, that
no,
Bischoff's back, because why would you show up to the building without gear, no matter what you're doing?
well, and so here was kind of the yin and the yang of it. That Rick, do you really want to win the title in street clothes?
Right. Of course
Like,
not.
so maybe he wasn't expecting it. That's why I kind of always go back and defer to it that, okay, if he's playing this game of chess, wow, he just did a little move and he's kind of getting them, I don't say into checkmate, but okay, they catered to something here or he pushed some button here. But then all of a sudden, why don't you just say, oh, hey guys, I forgot. Uh, You know what? They dealt the dash my tights. I do have them here. I mean, but it wasn't, I thought it just kind of made all of us look like, yeah, it was spontaneous, and we're going to get into the announcers knowing, not knowing, and all that kind of stuff. But I'll say this as the takeaway: if you would have told me in 1986 when I broke in that I'm going to work with Ric Flair in a world title match, main event of Nitro, and we're going to diplomatically say tear the house down because the people were really into it, they loved it. I'd have said okay, and they would have said, and he's going to be in street clothes. I would have said.
Yeah, you got
It,
8,000 fans in Mississippi. Of course they want to see Jeff Jarrett and Ric Flair. Like, I totally get that. But it is weird to me. I mean, I don't think for a second that Rick knew ahead of time that he was winning the title that night. But it just felt like to me, I've always heard, and again, what the fuck do I know? I'm not a wrestler, but I've always heard, hey, you always have your gear, always have
yeah,
your gear. And the idea that he's there made me think he had no confidence in WCW that that was going to change. And even if they wanted to wrestle, he's probably like, well, I don't really want to, so I'm not going to take my bag. Who cares? But the result is he winds up winning the freaking title in street clothes.
and he has the bad shoulder, which was legit.
Yes, he's going to have surgery in a couple of weeks. So it's logical that he would think, well, they're not going to put me in there then. Then
Yes.
they do. The whole thing. Let's
Yeah.
take the belt off the guy who just won it. Why? So we put it on this other guy who's going to have surgery in 2 weeks. What?
Oh, but we'll flip it back before he has surgery. Okay.
Okay. Thunder the
I told-
next. By the way, as you said, the announcers were pensive. They didn't even want to jump on it. There was a big hesitation. When Flair pins you, they're not celebrating the big champ. They're waiting to see, like, is that a mistake or is that really the finish? The idea being, Russo, I guess, as the narrative goes, didn't want the announcers to be waiting and have planned, canned responses. He wanted a more authentic reaction. But I think they're thinking, wait, the guy in street clothes who's leaving in 2 weeks to have surgery just won? Like, are we sure? Oh, okay. That's what we're doing. We're going with it. And Meltzer's kind of critical of that, saying, you know, they have an insatiable appetite to swerve their employees that are trying to get the product work. And in 90% of the cases, it's the worst thing for business. What do you think of that?
Did Dave say 90% of the cases?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd almost move that to like, I can't say because I'm sure in my TNA days we've tried different things, but at the end of the day, where I'm 56, so 36-year-old Jeff had an opinion on it, and maybe 46-year-old Jeff had a little bit of a different point. Nowadays, it's like if you can't sit and talk with your announcer and let's talk through this and work through this, and you guys are pros and we're all pros here, you got to let them in on it, or a well, there's so many different factors that you throw in. You don't have enough confidence in them. You don't trust them. You think they're maybe going to chirp or whatever. It's all counterproductive. So that's why I'd almost say it's closer to 100% in my mind nowadays. That if you try to work others that are a part of your product, that are a part of, I'm not saying everybody on the roster needs to know or whatever it may be, but your producer, your director, your announcers, that your core group of folks, you got to let them in on it so you can produce the very, or give yourself and the team an opportunity to produce the very best scenario you can.
Let's talk a little bit about the next day. We're doing Thunder, and it's in Lafayette, Louisiana. And
Oh,
Flair's going to lay you out with a belt shot, so that keeps the program going. He's going to cut a promo later on you, Crowbar, David Flair, and Daphne. They all come out to lay the boots to him. But then his old pal Double A makes the save. The main event was supposed to be Flair, Nash, and Arn taking on you, Crowbar, and David Flair. But of course, Arn is taken out in the back. You're going to hit Nash with a chair, and he's going to no-sell it. Flair starts acting like he's having a heart attack, and the Millionaires Club in the back tips the New Blood bus over, and a Goldberg monster truck runs it over. If you had trouble following that, so did the fans. That's a lot.
Well, and for you YouTube folks out there, you know what I'm talking about, Dave. If you'll put the Goldberg slide back up of the monster truck, that was this a segment that you had to get the Goldberg truck in some way? I don't know. I don't know that, but that's a big licensing deal with a big audience. The monster truck audience, especially during this time frame, was massive. So were we trying to? That's where going back, what master are you trying to serve? Your ratings, your talent in this scenario, your ratings, your talent. Just you reading that, because we went from a Jarrett Flair story to a Nash to, I don't know how many layers you got in there, and then it's back to a bus. Goldberg had to have something to run over the monster truck. A freaking mess.
Raw and Nitro are not head to head the following week because the NBA playoffs are going on. So Nitro is moved up, but it does do its peak rating with a 3.59 for your match with Kevin Nash for the WCW title. And if you're asking why it's for the WCW title, considering Flair was the champion on Thunder.
Yeah. Do we know? Here we go. Here with some questions, and go ahead. You're the expert.
They do a funeral where Russo gives the title belt to Jarrett. They pretend that Flair had a brain aneurysm, and Nash comes out of the casket to beat up Jarrett and David Flair like they were flies and leaves with the belt. So now we've got Jarrett versus Nash for a vacant title where we take it off of Rick and just say, he had a brain aneurysm. He's dead. He's in this casket right here. Oh, no, it's Kevin Nash. You lose the belt to this guy in street clothes. He doesn't even know he's winning it. Now he's got to go get shoulder surgery. So we just stick Kevin Nash in a. This is the worst, right? Is this the worst creative ever in your career?
It's definitely up there. Well, it's confusing.
Nonsensical. Certainly. It's most nonsensical.
Okay. Where did Nash sit? Was he part of creative or was that?
He had been prior, but I don't think at this point he's as involved.
So was it Russo?
Yeah, this is Russo who would make the stuff, and then Bischoff would give it a one-set for at the end.
During that era, yeah. Like stripping the title. Do we know why they stripped Rick? Was it creative?
Because he had a brain aneurysm. Are you listening?
But no,
he's in the casket. No, of course not. He had an aneurysm. They're doing a funeral for him. Duh, silly. If
you're listening to this, this really happened. This is not a fictitious podcast we're doing today. It really happened.
It really happened from Grand Rapids. There were 6,530 fans there. 4,632 of them paid $105,000. You would see Mike Awesome and Shane Douglas beat up on the wall, and DDP would make the save out of an ambulance. But really, he throws Awesome in the back and drives off. Vince Russo is with a casket celebrating Ric Flair's heart attack. Then the match happens. Now let's talk about the match. Meltzer would say, yes, Arquette draws record low ratings, but they keep the belt on him to swerve the fans, and the result is one of the lowest buy rates ever. Flair pops the highest rating in months, so they can't wait to take the belt off him. I guess if they don't have a title change every Monday, Nitro must have been a bad show. Russo beat up Billy Silverman with the belt and took over as ref, and wouldn't count to 3 as Nash took the entire match. Nash got right up after a chair shot. Nash kicked out after a belt shot. Steiner comes out, and the new blood overpowers him and handcuffs him to the ropes in the old crucifixion pose. Nash set up a powerbomb in the aisle on Russo when the blood, I believe it's a honey-like substance, a form of syrup and red dye, which is the standard movie blood mixture, came from the ceiling. It wasn't the most embarrassing segment on the show, but it was up there. Nash waited forever because the stuff was late falling. Then it fell, but it missed him again. He at least tried to move into the path of the red stuff, and he did get some of it when he moved. Somehow that stunned Nash, but not Russo. So Jarrett hits him with a guitar and pins him to win the title in about 5 minutes.
Hey, I wish we had video.
I mean, show that image again, that last image. This looks like an episode of Nickelodeon or something. Like, you can't do that on television. What are we even doing? This just...
And it got all over the fans. And I remember, if this picture's, keep it right here, because like, I don't know if they didn't have a mark or wherever it was, but when it started dropping, if I remember correctly, I think Nash kind of had to inch over it.
Yes. He had to lean into, he had to go towards it. And by the way, Meltzer would say this, the plan on May 15th, as of the late afternoon, was for Jarrett to beat Flair, but Russo changed his mind before the show, feeling that people wouldn't expect Flair to win. Jarrett was said to be unhappy, but was promised he'd get the belt back the next week. So Flair put Jarrett over big on his interview the next day at Thunder, basically, acting like for his age, for him to win the title again, he got lucky, and Jarrett was a great champion. But still, they take the belt off of you to switch it back like this.
Terrible. And that guitar shot, I like to say that I've, had my good fare of guitar shots, both good and bad. But this is just the difficulty level to hit a guy 6'11". That syrup is like walking on glass for both of us. I had to stretch out, make sure I hit him with enough bat speed, but didn't bust my ass so the whole world would start laughing. Kevin could sell. Oh, I wonder if you could put together like wrestling bloopers, because this would make it. This segment would it not?
Dude, it's got to be one of the worst segments. I mean, just this little segment of history of when you lose the belt to when you win it back. It all feels like a bad dream. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. There's no continuity. If you were to try to explain this to someone, then, now, forever, it wouldn't make any sense. But what does make sense is that smooth sack summer is finally upon us. Before we clicked record today, Jeff Jarrett said, son, my sack is smoother than a baby's bottom. And I know it's because he knows all about Manscaped. And if you're out there playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from pubes to bum. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped. You can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. How about get 20% off plus free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use the code MyWorld. Summertime and the trimming's easy. It's going to be the summer of no worries when you got no ball hair. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, the Performance Package 5.0 has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. Every man knows how scary it can get when you're going for a close shave below the belt, and that's why I trust Manscaped for all of my sensitive areas. Now, inside the package, you'll find the real star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It's a 5th-generation trimmer that just gets better and better and better every time. Now it's got 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads. You got a standard one for taking a little off the top. But boy, Jeff Jarrett loves to go smooth, boys and girls. He loves that foil blade all over his sack and, well, anywhere else your heart desires. We've also got dual LED spotlights to provide contrast on multiple skin tones. We got 3 length setting combs. And did I mention it's waterproof too? You can shave your sack at the beach like Jim Ross, trim up your pubes at the lake like Double J, Or just do what Dave Silva does and do it in the shower and then waffle stomp it down. Now you've got the perfect haircut, so you need to make sure you got those liquid formulations to keep that freshness, even at the hottest summer barbecues. Well, let me tell you, the Crop Soother is the ball aftershave lotion, but the real game changer, especially if you're Tony Schiavone and you got the world's stinkiest nuts and all of Alpharetta, you need the Crop Preserver. That's the anti-chafing ball deodorant. And listen, I don't know what makes them do the things they like to do, but I know that when it smells, they don't like to do it as much. Roll Tide. So hook this up. You'll be glad you did. They've even got 2 free gifts in your Performance Package 5.0. How about the boxers? They got the jewel pouch. It's made specifically for your nuts. Yeah, I'm talking to you. And they got the Shed travel bag, which is great for JR to hide his weed vape as he makes calls for Dynamite and Collision coast to coast. Need some more wet products? Say no more. Manscaped's new Buff Bundle is all you need to keep the summer heat a breeze. Stop laughing, Jeff. The bundle includes their signature silicone scrubber and the body wash. Ditch your nasty ass loofah and grab a taste of freshness. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code MyWorld at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code MyWorld at manscaped.com. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. You all right? Was it the JR line that got you? Shivani's stinky nuts. What got you today?
I wish I could have seen the look. Dave Silva, pull your face up right now because I got to ask you, what is a waffle stomp?
He's got himself muted.
You don't know the classic waffle stomp when like you got business in the shower, you got to your toes have to press it through all those little holes. It's classic.
Oh Lord, that's therapeutic. Good to see you, Dave.
That's therapeutic. I love you for that. Is. I'm excited to talk about the rest of 2000, but I really do want to thank Manscaped. If we can throw that graphic up one more time. They've been day one sponsors for us. It's a fun little ad we get to do on the show, but it's also a great product. It's not just a gimmick. And I know sometimes when you gift Manscaped that everybody has the gag gift reaction, but then they come back and they say, hey man, this is really a good product. And I really want you to try it. And you never know what you're going to like. Like on the right there, you see the ear and nose hair trimmer. They sell that too. My wife loves that. No kidding. And every time Tony Schiavone travels, he does take their wipes that they sell. They're individually done. He can't get enough of them. The trimmer's awesome. Lots of boys in the business are using this. They're using it to shave their backs and their arms and all that stuff. But I'm just saying, this is a really great company. It's a really great product. And if you enjoy this podcast, go check them out. Serious business. It costs nothing to look. Manscaped.com. Use the code MyWorld. We thank you for checking them out, and we thank them for their support. And with Father's Day right around the corner, why not? Hook it up.
Buddy, it will endorse this product till the cows come home. I can remember, gosh, it wasn't long after we started My World when Brother Dave Green says, yes, Manscaped is going to be a part of your show and all this. I immediately said, well, sign me up. I have a travel kit and I have a home kit. And I have truth be known, I now have a backup kit.
Oh, you're ready to go. You're Manscaped out.
I stole it from Cody because Cody's like, oh, all this. And so Karen will use mine and like, Cody, come here and all this. But the light on the trimmer,
it's real.
Game changer. Hotel rooms, not always the best lighting. Game changer, boys.
Check it out, manscaped.com. You'll be glad you did. All right, so let's talk about where we are with the state of the wrestling business. The WWF at the time is working hard to get out of their deal with USA because when they first signed that deal, well, they weren't nearly as hot as they are now. And they know, hey, we can get a better deal. We can get more money. They're right. So they wind up doing a deal with Viacom for TNN. Eventually, that's no longer going to be called the Nashville Network, and it's going to be called Spike. Now, the trouble is, ECW is already on the channel, and now the WWE is coming to town. So respectfully, as much as I loved ECW, even I had to admit it was the third brand. So the WWF's the big dog at this point. WCW is number 2. And then much lower is ECW. Now, I know the hardcore ECW fans, myself included, we may have argued that once upon a time. But when you take a look at the ratings, there's just no comparison. But I know that you grew up in the business and you're a business junkie about the industry more so than you are a fanboy of the matches and storylines and things like that. The idea that ECW had a television deal here and now WWE is trying to get out of their television deal to come to the station ECW's on, that had to fascinate you, even though you weren't involved, right?
And Conrad, I go back. Yes, I'm a business junkie, and looking at different. Uh, we always joke: are they playing checkers or chess? And like navigating kind of the pathway through all this. And I obviously left WWF in '99, October of '99, and then to kind of hear this chatter of wow. So, because USA Network, I can remember early 80s, going back to my dad's bedroom. He had let me watch the WWF and then kind of the transition into the USA Network. And I'm like, they've been on that network for years and they're going to move. And so that was one of the not first times, but just kind of looking at the business and look, just okay, but here's the thing that man, Vince really does operate his business because the flip side is WCW. We were owned by the network, and like the difference in the two companies, which I'd have alluded to many times when I went there the first time, the '96, '97 time. Just okay, this is a corporate environment. WWF Vince is a entrepreneurial spirit, single owner. You know who's running the show, but for them to move networks push my mind was pushing ECW out of the way or the side or whatever it was going to be. And obviously a huge rights fee increase. It's just like a real learning kind of thought process that just how independent Vince was, that he's leaving for him to leave USA Network and move. I think that was a ballsy move. And it, in a lot of ways, he had to leave in order for them to get respect. Because when he went back, in which he did, the rights fees went up even. I mean, just it was a ballsy business move, which I respected.
Another business move that everybody set all their business aside to do the right thing. Brian Pillman Memorial Show takes place on May 25th. I know that this was one of the rare times where you would see WWF talent, WCW talent, ECW talent, all on the same card. Were you ever approached about being on any of those shows?
I didn't Google that. I feel like I did a Cincinnati.
Okay.
I feel like I did one. Um, I do. I'm just trying to recall because um, I don't know. Either I was there and didn't work. I don't know, Conrad, but yeah, that was a. We're talking. Put it in complete context. I mean, the Monday Night Wars were still going on. It wasn't like the war was over by any stretch. They were still going on, and both sides let talent go and work this show, which I thought was really cool. And that may be one of the only times during that time frame that they allowed talent to be on the same. I don't know. That's a good little research question. Was it the only time they allowed talent to be on the same
I
same
think there
card?
may have been a Brian Hildebrand show of the same sort. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably it. So listen, let's talk about where we are back in Insanity Land. After you have won the title and had the whole triple cage with an actor, and you're the champ, and you lose it to a guy with one arm and street clothes, but then he died. So we had a funeral, and then you wrestled another number one contender, and you win it. So the belt's back with you. So you're like, "Phew, God, we got all that behind us." Until we tape in Saginaw, Michigan for Thunder the next night, it's a three-way with you, Scott Steiner, and Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash wins the belt back. And that leads to a Salt Lake City show for Nitro. And this is where Nash says, I don't really deserve to be champion. Rick never lost it. I'm just going to give the belt back to Rick.
Come on.
So now Rick is the champion again because it turns out he's not dead, y'all. And literally, Kevin Nash hands him the title, and Ric Flair's the champion. And it's announced that there's going to be a rematch between you and Ric Flair for the world title on Nitro. And Meltzer would say, it's actually amazing how good this match was. David was the ref. It wasn't like there's any great moves, but Rick knew exactly how and when to make comebacks, and the crowd was going nuts. Rick hit David to knock him out. Charles Robinson comes out as a second referee, but he gets bumped. The finish would see David give Jarrett the guitar, and he got the pin with Russo counting the falls. Fans were pelting the ring with garbage. Make no mistake about it. The people somehow cared about the belt when Flair had it, which guaranteed they'd take it off him now. I mean, the whole thing in context. We finally get the David Arquette stuff out of our system. And by the way, he's a great guy. Donated all the money to charity. It all went to Owen Hart's family and Brian Pillman's family and that sort of thing. So shout out to Arquette. But we've got that creative that was heavily criticized behind us. And now you drop it to a guy in street clothes, fake death, new champion. You win it back. You lose it the next day. The guy who beat you just gives it back to the now undead guy. We have another match. We can't just have a match. We got to have his favorite referee. We got to have his son. We got to have Russo involved. The whole thing's just a mess. Fans don't want it. They were hot for Flair and his story of maybe one last time. And this was just a missed opportunity. Like, I can't imagine if fans were supporting this, we could have had a pay-per-view with you and Ric Flair instead of whatever this was, right?
So, Conrad, you hated me back in my 90s. Fast forward.
Human fast forward button.
Yeah, okay. But with that being said, now that after 2 years plus of doing podcast, and we've covered bits and pieces of all 36 years, is there one talent that was, I guess you could say, snake bit between me and him? You look at the Horseman circumstances, that never really came to fruition with a good payoff. Then you look at this debacle, not a real good payoff. So when we did Ric Flair's last match, in a lot of ways, it was a 25-year payoff to a program that was snake bit that never really got an opportunity to do anything that made half sense, because in spite of all this nonsense, the highest ratings on the show and the people were with it. Like you just said, imagine if we had done a story, just one pay-per-view match that would have built with just half logic. What a mess. But yeah, it was. Is there a guy that I've worked with over my whole career that stutter started and was such a mess like this? I can't think that there is.
I'm wondering, because just to give everybody context, because we want to think like, hey, this is just a temporary thing. It's only going to be a mess like this for a little while. As a reminder, this is June of 2000. What happens in July of 2000?
Conrad, my stomach, I was sitting there just a second ago. It's still hurting from me laughing. I apologize. But yeah, hey, it's the old Robert Fuller, Jerry Jarrett. Jerry, the good news about this house out here is it can't get no worse. Robert, what'd you say last week? Well, Jerry, it can get worse, pal. Stick around.
Bash at the Beach 2000 with the Hulk Hogan walkout. That's still on deck a month later.
I mean, we've got lots of good stuff to come in the rest.
You're going to work with Shane Douglas the next night on Thunder. And what's interesting about that is he's a heel and you're a heel. Heel versus heel. I know you're sort of a purist, if you will. You're sort of old school and classic in that regard. It does feel like it, to me, again, I'm not a wrestler. It does feel like it's got to be much easier. He's going to be the baby face. He's going to be the heel. But when you got two heels together and it's a television match, so you're not really able to properly heel on the crowd and do a lot of crowd interaction like you might at a live event. Is that more challenging, heel versus heel on TV?
For sure, because Shane, and I don't recall the exact conversation, but I know enough, know him, and he knows me well enough to know neither one of us wanted to turn babyface for the night just for the match. There's no upside in it, and that's something that you just kind of referred to as, I think you said, traditionalists. Um, and I can see where you're going with that. I think the mindset, and this was taught to me in that, and I think, boy, when you watch as much wrestling as I do, or you do, or in me being an active wrestler, it's a lot of times. This is what I've noticed. I'll say this: I was taught, and then at a day one, when you sit down to figure out, all right, you're booked against opponent B, whatever it may be. All right, what's the story we're going to tell? It's a 2 minute story, 5 minute story, 7 minute story. How long are we supposed to wrestle? Then you kind of back yourself in to the finish by what's the story we're telling. And they told us this night, go out and have this heel match. I do remember this. And it's just like, for what, guys? This is going nowhere. Shane don't want to be a babyface. I don't want to be a babyface. Neither one of them. It doesn't help us at all. So why are we why are we having this match? Just to see who can win? Okay, let's go try that. But it sure is going to be kind of non-compelling television.
The main event of Thunder is Tank Abbott and Rick Steiner teaming up to take on Kevin Nash and Scott Steiner. The winner of the fall is going to face you at the Great American Bash. You keep trying to get people disqualified so nobody scores a pin. And I guess that's good psychology. But every time the ref calls a DQ, the cat, who's the commissioner, I guess,
Yep.
overrules him. So finally, Nash pins Steiner after a power bomb. So it's going to be two of the OG, the foundational members of the clique here, Kevin Nash versus Jeff Jarrett at the pay-per-view. Lance Storm is brought into the company, and he signs a contract with WCW around this time. I was always a big fan of his work in ECW. I was really excited to see him come here and know that his checks were going to clear every time, and he was going to be able to take better care of his family. But I was always impressed with him bell to bell. What did you think of Lance Storm?
He can go, as always. The first time I think I saw Smoky Mountain. How long was wait?
Yeah, Smoky Mountain's his first spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would have been the first time, but I didn't see him as it aired current. But anyway, he's has always been able to go. Um, he can just work. Period. I hate to say the right way, but I think that's the simplistic term. Is yeah, Lance impressed me from the very first time I saw him. Um, I wonder if old Lance knew coming in what a zoo I'm about to come into. So he debuted in June of 2000.
Yeah.
What you're saying?
Yeah.
Let's wow.
Goldberg is going to come back on June 5th. It's the go home Nitro for the Great American Bash. And well, the ratings are a bit of a disappointment. It's the most hyped Nitro since the first Bischoff Russo Nitro, which was back on April 10th. And this means we've actually got Goldberg's first match back. And it's like a pay per view style lineup of matches. And people during the day, backstage, before we're live on TV, people in WCW were internally saying, hey man, we might pop a 4 rating on this. I mean, there was a lot of confidence. As it turned out, Raw did a 5.95 rating and Nitro got a 2.86. The head to head was 5.49 for Raw and 2.67 for Nitro. So Raw still more than doubles Nitro. And that means technically you've got 9.4 million people watching wrestling here. The show is from the Phillips Arena, a far cry from the Georgia Dome, but still in Atlanta. And there's 13,487 fans here. Now remember, folks, back in July of 98, and we're in June of 2000, so we're less than 2 years away. Goldberg went from selling 40,000 tickets to beat Hulk Hogan at the Georgia Dome to now we're at the Phillips Arena where we've sold 5,939 seats. We have roughly 1/8 of the crowd that we did less than 2 years prior. This fall is really
Amazing.
Something to be studied.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, all of it is just kind of look at the rapid deterioration. That stat we gave a couple of months ago in North Carolina at the Dean Dome, how small that house was less than 11 months later. It wasn't 11 months in between shows. So, yeah, and the kind of the buzz or the chatter and everything that kind of went with it. And I don't, I think playoffs were over or we weren't facing it. I think there was a lot of signs that gave folks optimism for Bill's return, and yeah, there was an equal amount of disappointment when the number came out.
You're going to be working Sting, and it's implied it's a title match. But of course, Sting beats you in 2 minutes and 24 seconds, and Bischoff immediately announces it's not a title match. But still, we've got the champion losing on TV here in 2 minutes and 24 seconds.
Shock TV. It just at its peak.
By the way, show that belt again. Show that photo again, Silva. That's not the original big gold belt. Just so everybody knows, that's one of the cast copies that was made of the big gold belt by Andre Freitas at AFX Studios. And I know there's been lots of questions about when did it make its last appearance. The actual belt would be at the following pay-per-view in July for Bash at the Beach. But that belt right there is probably the one that's now in Hogan's shop, if I had to guess. Because
how do you know that?
Well, because he's got the Jeff Jarrett nameplate on his down there. So it makes sense that like when you came down and laid down for Hogan, you're wearing a different one. If Silva will throw it back up there, I'll show you. Here's the tail. Look how far apart. Well, a few things. First of all, it's all gold. So the cast copies were gold plated. The actual original is made out of silver and sort of two-tone, you might call it. So it's got silver and gold. It also had a brown strap. This is a black strap. But if you take a look at the spacing on the actual belt, the spacing between the main plate and the side plate is not that big. You could lay 4 fingers on right there. That's how big the gap is. On the real one, it's like a finger. So you could just tell very quickly, like, oh, that's a cast copy. That's not the
right, so where is the original one?
It's in the back. WCW still had it.
No, right today.
Oh, it's here in my house in Gunnersville.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where is and so Hogan's got that one that Sting's holding.
Yes. Hogan walked out of Bash at the Beach 2000 with that one and kept it. Now he's got it displayed down at his shop and he's spray painted NWO over it. But that belt that Sting's holding there that now Hogan's held was never actually spray painted. That's just one he did years later for fans to take pictures with and all that.
And there's your story behind the story belts.
There's your little belt nerd stuff.
There you go.
So Sting keeps beating you up after the match. He puts you in the Scorpion Deathlock on the ramp. And then he hits you with a guitar shot and you have to fall off the ramp. Now, I'm not saying that you're not scared to do crazy stunts. We've seen you do some crazy stunts. But boy, you measure twice and cut once. How nervous were you about taking a bump off a stage when really, I think I know you well enough to say, now, why am I falling off the stage? Could he not just hit me with a guitar and I tumble?
Yes. All of that. And I get it. They were hyped up and wanted to every segment of the Goldberg return. Just they were swinging for the fences. I say I'm assuming Vince and Eric, but yeah, they were swinging for the fences. A lot of positivity, if you will, everybody was, run the play, Jeff, run the play. That's what I did.
There's some news and notes about Lex Luger and Miss Elizabeth. I guess they weren't happy with some planned angles and they're sent home from some Thunder tapings on May 30th. Luger's supposed to do a run in and attack Palumbo, and he didn't really want to do that. I guess he didn't like the direction that program was headed. And Miss Elizabeth has a little more sympathy from the locker room. I guess the idea is they wanted her to wrestle Kimberly at the pay-per-view. But Miss Elizabeth, despite being around wrestling this whole time, she's not a trained wrestler. She's never had a match. But, that didn't matter because Vince Russo did it, bro. So maybe there's a little more sympathy for her. Let's talk about Baltimore, where we are here. Got a great history of Great American Bashes. And this is not one of those great shows or a great drawing show. It does, here in 2000, the Great American Bash as a paid gate of $154,445, but that's from 4,677 fans. The idea that there's less than 5,000 paid for a Great American Bash in Baltimore is crazy, especially when you think the WWF has never been hotter. Back in 99, there were over 11,000 fans here. Back in 98, there were nearly 13,000 fans here. And just to give you some context of where we are year over year, take a look at these numbers from the Observer. The average attendance in June of 99 was 5,874. Now here in June of 2000, 3,204. When you take a look at May of 99, June of 99's gate rather was 146. A year later, we're down 46% to 78 grand. Of course, we're not selling out any house shows, but our ratings are down too. Back in June of 99, we were doing a 3.28. Now here in June of 2000, we're doing a 2.86. So we're down 12.8%. And when we talk about, the actual buy rate, we did a 0.43 for the Bash in 99, and you did 298K at the gate. We're 154,000 here, so roughly half the gate and less than half on a buy rate. We go from a 0.43, which means about $2 million to WCW, to a 0.19, which means about $1.24 million to WCW. I mean, we've halved everything. We've fallen in half in just 1 year.
And to put it in further context, you'll know this probably right off the top of your head. What was the first year of the Great American Bash?
85, yeah.
So, in my mind, the kid from Hendersonville, the first big show, Conrad, and look, in Tennessee, maybe co-shows, and it's going to be race ticket prices, Lawler in a title match, or whatever you want to say. But it was still in the territory. The first kind of big show that was touring in my mind, and of course Mania, or Rumble came later, but I guess Mania maybe would be one. But right at the same time, and just because the WCW talent, and it wasn't called the NWA talent was, we'll call, a part of the territory, that was the Great American Bash always kind of had a sentimental value to me. That's where I'm going with it, because it was the first kind of big touring show, and they came in, and Lawler and my dad ran opposition the night of. They had one at the Liberty Bowl, and WCW didn't draw well. I think that was a bash. But anyway, man, hearing those numbers, Conrad, just dropping in half. But the Great American Bash, isn't that the OG?
Yes.
The very first big show?
Oh, no, that's Starrcade 83.
Ah, okay.
Starrcade 83 is the real granddaddy of them all. And then WrestleMania became a thing, obviously, in March of 85. But at the summer of 85 is where we did a stadium show. And that's probably what you're thinking about. A big outdoor summertime stadium show. The Great American Bash was number 1 in 85. They did it in Charlotte. It's a high watermark for Jim Crockett Promotions. Flair came in on a helicopter for his entrance. Yep. Really cool spectacle stuff. But then the next year is when they did the tour, and they booked a bunch of stadiums, and that didn't work out as well in 86. Maybe they got it. They got a little too big for their britches.
They did. Yeah. Okay.
This show, though, Great American Bash, even Meltzer would say this was a well-packed show. The promise of a big move in the professional wrestling world. And Bischoff is actually saying this, and there's nothing Vince McMahon can do about it. On this show, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan are both putting their careers on the line. Chris Kanyon is wearing his halo. Remember, he's been thrown off of the triple cage. He's going to come out and turn on DDP during his ambulance match against Mike Awesome. The other matches on the show, we've got the Chronic defeating the Mama Lukes with Big Vito, wearing the WCW Hardcore title the whole match. G.I. Bro, who used to be Booker T, defeated Shawn Stasiak in a boot camp match, which is a 10-count match. Shane Douglas beat the Wall in a tables match. Scott Steiner won an asylum match over Rick Steiner and Tank Abbott when Rick stopped Tank from hitting his brother with a chain. That's important for later. And Hulk Hogan beats Kidman to earn his shot at the title the next month. What did you think at the time of the Hogan Kidman story, and what do you think about it with the benefit of hindsight?
Well, at the time, I was mildly amused that I'm like, okay, Hulk's doing this. What an opportunity for Billy. Billy will sell his ass off. Billy Kidman, man, he's a hell of a worker. He could fly all around and okay, but the story getting into it, and you could just kind of see real time that oh man, this is has potential, and then you could just kind of see that the air being let out of it, and wow, I don't really think this is going to do either guy any good. And obviously now, as we look back on it, it was because it was kind of a part of everything else that we've talked about. The silly title switches, the Booker T is GI Bro, and that just jumped off the page at me. Um, Canyon and a Halo 1 month, the next month, he's back. Mike Awesome in the bus, just kind of the overall vibe of the entire product was in reverse of what it had been. I mean, just brutal that it never the Hogan Kidman thing, like so many other things during this time frame, man, it had some potential. And some folks had high hopes for it. But the reality is it laid an egg like so many others.
Well, what's not ever going to lay an egg, and I want you to speak to this, is Mack Weldon, because I know you've been rocking some Mack Weldon. And if I know anything about Jeff Jarrett, it's that, hey, man, we want to look good, but we want to be comfortable. And I know sometimes that means you can't have it both ways, like a 0-calorie cheeseburger, but Mack Weldon has figured it out. Guys tend to think looking sharp means some starchy Oxfords and stiff chinos, but effortless comfort is what good old Double J is all about. Mack Weldon makes timeless apparel with modern performance fabrics for guys who want to look and feel sharp without sacrificing comfort. They've got light as air underwear and innovative anti-odor tees. They've even got versatile yet comfortable pants. Mack Weldon has a full range of clothes that just never go out of style. What's cool too is, a lot of times when you hear that people have performance fabric, you think, oh, that's going to be that shiny finish or it's going to feel techy. I don't want to be a nerd. Well, that's not what you're doing here. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. So they look like, I guess we'll call it quote unquote regular clothes. But buddy, it's the latest in modern comfort. It's the go-to choice for Double J and every guy who wants to look great without even really trying. Some guys just want to look good without calling attention to themselves. I mean, peacocking's for the birds. Well, Mack Weldon gives you that understated good look for understated confidence. It's not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance material. I am a big fan of the underwear. I think you will be too. It's air knit. It's going to keep you cool, dry, and comfy all day long, especially in the summertime. And hey, when it starts to cool off, how about these crazy comfortable but elevated sweatpants? It's a part of their Ace collection, and what you'll see is, hey man, I could actually wear that out. That doesn't just have to be something around the house. You're going to look good. They've even got upgraded classic polos that now have antimicrobial silver threads. They've even got an ultra soft antimicrobial tee that's going to help you stay fresher longer. Get all these timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go right now to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order with the promo code MyWorld20. That's MackWeldon.com. And the promo code is MyWorld20. Jeff, I know you've been rocking Mack Weldon for a bit. What are you thinking about Mack Weldon?
Buddy, it is my go-to. I did a media day Friday in Omaha and traveled all over, multiple radio stations, TV, social. Buddy, when I got up early Friday morning, put on the Mack Weldon V-cut T-shirt and the underwear. Got home Saturday, washing the clothes as I was sorting them. I said, I'm going to put these over here. They're sitting on my suitcase as we speak because I'll be wearing those tomorrow at AAA. And I'm sure when I get home, it is my go-to. It is super comfort. And you touched on it. Whatever the fabric, however it's crafted, it is super, super, Jesus, Conrad. I guess I'll just say impressive because it's lightweight, air. They really are a cut above any other tee or underwear, and it's because of their cloth. I could not be a bigger supporter of the brand. So it is my go-to, and Karen is well aware of that. And she's told me, "Hey, you're going to order some more shirts." And got some ordered right now. So
Let me just recommend, if you're somebody who travels, if you're somebody like if you're working outdoors a lot, maybe you're, an out in the field salesperson. I recommend this.
there you go.
If you're going to be somebody who, hey man, I'm going to go do this golf outing, but I don't want to be embarrassingly pouring sweat at the end. Let me recommend this. If you're somebody who travels and you know how the cabin temperature in an airplane, 1 minute you're too cold, the next minute you're dripping sweat. This is the ultimate travel companion. Mack Weldon, for those moments, man, they come through in the clutch every time. It's MackWeldon.com. Use our promo code and you're going to get 20% off your first order. The promo code is MyWorld20. That's MyWorld20 at MackWeldon.com. Check it out. You'll be glad you did.
Go to my socials at Real Jeff Jarrett on X. Any of those photos you see from the last Friday in Omaha, sporting the Mack Weldon tee.
Come on, let's do it. So listen, Rick has his career on the line too, just like Hulk did against Kidman. And he's put his career on the line that he can beat his son, David. Here's what's written. Rick came out with his entire family, his wife, Beth, Reed, along with both daughters, Megan and Ashley. It was looking sad when Rick went to do his flip into the corner and couldn't even get the full flip. But aside from that, Rick showed his unbelievable abilities since this was far and away David's best match ever. Russo hit Rick with a baseball bat and handcuffed him. David used the figure four with Russo helping David with leverage. Reed Flair hopped the rail, but Russo pie-faced him down. Reed then gave Russo a low blow, got the handcuff key from him, which referee Charles Robinson finally got and unlocked Rick. Ashley then jumped Russo and locked him up with the handcuffs. Rick made a big comeback, chopping the hell out of Russo and David, and finished David off, with David taking the Flair slam off the top, a knee drop in the figure four. After the match, of course, Russo challenged Rick to a match with Rick's career back on the line at Nitro. And I can't believe this is real. Dave actually gave a David Flair match 2.5 stars. And how about this? This is the pro wrestling debut of Charlotte Flair. How about that?
About that. Conrad, I know it's family, but David Flair, the circumstances that they put that kid, boy in.
He couldn't rent a car.
Criminal. Yeah. It's, and I get it. That was his father and family. And hey, man, we got to get ratings. Had David had, I'm not even going to say a year. But just some time to really not perform in front of a microscope. Yeah. The guy succeeded. And I know this might be caught with criticism, but the amount of training and everything that goes with it, he didn't have 2 strikes against him. He had 3, because you're going against a vet, an old timer. Yes, it's his dad, but my gosh, man, it was just, I hate it for Dave. Yeah, Dave's a good dude, and just the timing and all of it. It was just can't expect a kid like that to perform. How old was he? Did you just say he couldn't rent a car?
He's 20.
That's just crazy.
He's 20 and he's making 6 figures, and Stacy Keebler's his girlfriend. I don't want to hear any more about David Flair got a raw deal. David Flair, tell any 20-year-old, hey man, we'd like to pay you 6 figures to wrestle on television, and you don't have to worry about training or nothing. Just come on to TV and we're going to give you $2,000 a week. And oh, by the way, I'd like to introduce you to your new girlfriend, Stacy Keebler. What 20-year-old dude turning that down?
Nobody. You're right. But
come on.
For a career, he just was set up to fail.
I hate him to this day. It's unbelievable. Not really. Okay, an Inferno match is next. Yep, we're setting cats on fire.
Oh my gosh.
Vampiro and Sting. The less said about this, the better. An Inferno match. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Wait, isn't Sting just lighting up that stuff that you put around your pool to keep the mosquitoes away? Yeah. It's all stupid.
Horrible.
And to give proper context for this, we're like a year after everything happened with Owen. and we're still up doing silly stunts. I don't know. It's a little silly. And now it's time for our main event. Jeff Jarrett is going to retain the WCW title. He's going to beat Kevin Nash in 17 minutes and 22 seconds. Meltzer had this to say. As if it hasn't been beaten to death enough, they teased the Survivor Series 97 finish with Conan as the bell ringer, Rey Mysterio as the timekeeper, Disco as the belt keeper, Juventud as the ring announcer, and Ernest Miller as the second referee. In other words, they were all there to take bumps to get the match over because these two guys can't work a main event on each other on their own. Actually, Jarrett was good. Nash was immobile.
Wait, what'd you say?
Actually, Jarrett was good. You mean print this out? I'm going to put that on your tombstone. Actually, Jarrett was good.
No, I just think it's a typo. Dave never gives me compliments. Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead. Having fun. Just having fun here today.
Can you imagine if we I mean, we're not going to do that, but when you decide to retire, we're going to make a little graphic. We're going to have Silva make a fake tombstone. And it's going to have your career and put in quotes. Actually, Jarrett was good. And then beside it, put star and a quarter. Because that's what he gave this match. Star and a quarter. Mysterio Jr. hit Nash in the knee with a chair. Jarrett went to work on the chair with the knee. Fans were already chanting for Goldberg, who was teased throughout the show, with Bischoff saying they weren't going to let him in, but they were still doing monster truck sightings. There's very little heat, but Jarrett did a good job on working over the leg, and the announcers, who on this night had a horrible product to call, did a very good job in this match. Finally, Jarrett gets the figure 4, and Madden's analysis here was really good, pointing out that Nash has had 3 reconstructive surgeries on that knee, and he's lucky to even be walking. After a rope break, Nash started to come back, and despite Jarrett doing a good job working over the knee, and Madden and Shivani doing an even better job of selling it, he got up and didn't sell it at all for the rest of the match. Conan hit him in the head with the ring bell for a teased one fall.
Oh, Lord.
It's just amazing to me that the announcers and you are putting all this thought into, all right, well, we know he's had knee issues. We'll just work a knee, and that is my finish. And everybody's on board with that. Nash just pops up, and it's like a cartoon ring bell. I mean, this is WCW. It is what it is.
It is. Yes, it is.
Listen, there's just all kinds of shenanigans. I mean, we're gonna hit people with bells. Disco's gonna attack the referee. Juventud's gonna hit Nash with a chair. I mean, just all kinds of shenanigans, including the power bombs to the cat. There's kicks that are missing by a foot, and then more power bombs. And here comes Charles Robinson, and Rick Steiner stops him, but he just turned. But maybe he forgot. Tank Abbott's in there. Scott Steiner's brawling. Tank Abbott has pounded on Nash, and Mysterio Jr. is given the Bronco Buster. Goldberg runs in for the save, but of course, waits forever. Nash points at Jarrett, which guaranteed he'd be the one getting speared, and Jarrett scored the pin. Goldberg, Russo, and Bischoff are all hugging as the show goes off the air. Star and a quarter. You know, listen, we've heard about overbooked before. But I want to remind everybody, Conan's the bell ringer, Ray is the timekeeper, Disco's the belt keeper, Juventud's the ring announcer, Ernest Miller's the second referee, and we've still got Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner, Tank Abbott, Russo, Bischoff. I mean, I know we got to have story, but is overbooked enough to describe what this is?
I mean, look, and there's no possible way to defend it, but I am going to take it all the way back 180. That the people that came there that night are not so much worried and got up the next day and at water cooler talk had these different conversations about being overbooked and this and that. It was entertaining. Look, we know because we're in the minutia of it and the grind and everything that goes with that. The whole, I mean, we could go in a rabbit hole on the Rick Steiner story, lack of story, the nonsensical part of it, even the Goldberg return, this whole thing. And I know they were trying to make him a heel and all this, but you could dissect all of this. And the filthy animals, that was another thing. That's what they didn't refer. We didn't refer to it in the notes, I don't think. But Ray and Conan and Kidman and that group, they were me very entertaining. But like, how did they get in this story? I guess was I say Conrad. So I can talk out of both sides of my mouth on just the complete nonsensical overbook crap on the one hand. Then the other hand, when you go back and watch it, I mean, it is what it is. And the people went, okay, Goldberg returned and he beat Nash. And now that's the chapter for now for WCW. The business side of it tells the story. I mean, it wasn't quite in, yeah, maybe it was in the financial death spiral, but it was year over year. My God, what a mess. Just what a freaking mess.
Yeah, it is a mess. And let's talk a little bit about just the sentiment backstage. I mean, after it's all said and done, is anybody thinking, man, we nailed it? That was a home run. I mean, I've heard like Mick Foley talk about when something goes really well, that glow and that he called it a high, the high afterwards that everybody sort of feels this euphoria and everybody's excited. What was the feeling here after a show like this where you had all that stuff?
You know, I think when Conrad, I mean, I can't name an event or a TV, Nitro, a Thunder, a pay per view, but we kind of got into. I mean, you look back when Bischoff and Russo came back in April, there was a direction and there was some kind of buzz and optimism, but there was still that overriding cloud of, I'll call it WCW and lack of leadership. So I don't want to say or pretend that we went from this high in April, like, all right, we're going to turn this bad boy around. Then we do 2 or 3 title changes with me and Flair, and then Nash gives it back, and Jeff ends up champion. And then, okay, so now we've got to set up the return. It's like Bill coming back and keeping the title on me because that was the crux of his return. He beat he could have speared me and switched the title. And if the world heavyweight title is the most important prop, if you will, if that's what you want to call it, I think it's the main prop. And Bill returned, and he chose his return. Didn't return on the in ring. He returned on the crux of a world title match, and he sided with Jeff and Bischoff, Russo, and 7 or 8 other heels. It's like the dilution of Goldberg's return was diluted in the weeks building up to it. That's where, oh, Conrad, man, we could really go down the whole rabbit hole. Just the importance of the simplicity of telling stories is paramount. I mean, let the people digest what we're doing. And there was no way you could digest a tenth of that, let alone the weeks leading up to it that we went through and all the hogwash and nonsense. And man, Conrad, I mean, we've kind of did a whole episode on the results of a lack of leadership because there was, we can say Russo was writing it and Bischoff was editing in it, and just that culture, I guess, is where you're going. You asked me, was there a high when you came to the curtain? Yes, not so much. Oh man, we did it. It was okay for the set of circumstances. We did what we came to do. So there was good job. Thanks for the match. Good job. Thanks for the match. But I don't think anybody back then thought for a minute, all right, boys, this is going to turn the ship around. Just no way.
Hey, you have a phrase that you've told me. I mean, we've had a bunch of conversations about real life business and things like that. And you've said it a few times on the show. But in regards to creative, I'm sure this applies. It applies for promoting or sales or marketing. If you confuse them,
You lose them.
Yeah. That's what's happening here in WCW. I mean, it's hard to follow, so we just quit following it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. Like, if and we've all been there with a television show before. Like, I've tried to watch shows that I was really excited about because they got a lot of critical acclaim and I read a lot of great reviews. But then I'd turn it on, like if my parents were over watching television with us, and it's like, hey, I've heard about this great show. Let's watch it together. When the subtitles start, my dad's like, I'm not going to be paying attention to this. Because in his head, man, it's going to be hard for me to watch the show and read the subtitles. Now, that's not a problem for me. It's not a problem for the wife. But my dad's like, nah, I don't like watching shows with the subtitles. Now, it would be easy to say, well, you just got to get over that. But at the same time, my dad realizes, or I could just watch something else. And that's sort of the same thing here, Jeff. If you confuse those fans, they'll just watch something else. And a lot of fans did. And a lot of fans actually had questions for us over at our community page at myworldpod.com. So if you haven't already, and you got a question for Jeff, that's the place to do it. myworldpod.com. Francis Reyes says, knowing in hindsight, now as the pay-per-view after this was Bash at the Beach, do you look back at the Great American Bash differently than you did back then? I mean, because you didn't have the context of what was to come, right?
No, obviously not. Francis, thank you. Appreciate the question and support always. I think I hit the nail on the head. For me, my mindset was we had Stockdale syndrome, or what is it?
Stockholm syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was the culture and environment we were in that we got paid. We showed up in Nitro and Thunder and pay per view, and the house shows were cut back at this point, and we just kind of how are we going to make the best of this situation? In 12 months' time, we had, I mean, I came in October of '99, and Bill Bush did my deal. But so was Bill my boss? Not really. JJ Dillon was kind of on the fringes on that, but I didn't know if because of him and my dad's relationship, I truly didn't know, is he going to be a supporter of mine or not? That's a whole nother set of circumstances to go back there in that time. And then Russo was there. And then you immediately knew, okay, Kevin Sullivan, Bischoff, there's rumblings. He's still under contract. But then, okay, then you have, we didn't call him at this time, the Millionaires Club. You still had Hogan and 7 or 8 other of those guys that were around. And look, they're kind of going to do what they want to do. I've talked about it over and over and over. Just the difference in the two organizations. You knew where the buck stopped at WWF. You were clueless to that, and so when you are walking into work in that week after week, month after month, TV after TV, the expectation is, okay, there's got to be some give and take, but you got to have to kind of protect yourself the most you can with whatever kind of leverage you may or may not have. Dog eat dog world. But the underlying theme of all of it is don't get, you can't get your expectations up. And none of us did. None of us thought that, okay, man, this is it, boys. We're righting this ship, because we just knew the tools weren't there. We didn't probably say it out loud, but I think we all understood the tools aren't here to build this out.
Let's do a few more questions and then we'll put a button on this one. This one comes to us from Bryant. He says, when you face off against your pay-per-view opponent so many times leading up to the pay-per-vview, does it devalue the match? How do you keep them engaged when it's your 4th match in 2 weeks?
All story. And if the story's not there, it's diminishing returns. If the story is there, and look, the story wasn't there. So I'm not trying to, Brian, appreciate your question, but I'm not trying to say, oh yeah, but if done correctly, 4 matches in 2 weeks may be impossibility. But I'm of the mindset, if you can tell stories and they did it. So, I mean, that's how the business was back then. You have to build. If you can up the stakes and make match 2 mean more than match 1 by the finish you gave in, match 3 bigger than 2 by the finish you gave in 2, and so on and so on. That can be done. And I think there's the most simple analogy is we're in basketball, NBA playoffs, or hockey's. Okay, they're going to play each other 7 games. All right, well, why would we want to watch game 7 if we've watched 6 games in a row? Oh, wait, this is for all the marbles. So if you can build the anticipation and the intrigue by the prior matches, then the stakes go up. It also can work.
Johnny Sanders wants to know, was this the worst creative you've ever been a part of?
We've kind of hit on it, Johnny. It's right there at the top of it. And I mean, creative is subjective, but subjectively speaking, this is certainly right up there at the top.
Shane Cooney wants to know, what did Jeff think of Hulk working so far down on the undercard of the pay-per-view? He was either main event, semi-made, or third from the top for most of his WCW run. Here he's booked below Ric Flair and David Flair, Vampiro and Sting, Jeff and Nash. Did Jeff think that positioning helped or hurt Hulk and Kidman, or did that not matter?
I think when the era of monthly pay-per-views entered, and I may be off, but I think the positioning on the card became much less important. I think prior to, when there was the big 4, the big 3 pay-per-views or whatever it may be, it was the top 2, maybe 3 matches that sold. When you went to monthly pay-per-views, I never looked at, like this card you're particularly talking about, I didn't really look at Hulk being 4th down on the card. You're just not going to put Hulk.
Well, hang on now. Let's just mention this.
Okay.
At the time, there was a big conversation amongst internet wrestling fans and certainly in the newsletters. WCW needs to push the younger guys. They're not giving the younger guys an opportunity, blah, blah, blah.
Huge conversation.
Now, there's a big moment in time, this whole Kidman Hogan thing, and it's been discussed and beat up a bunch because a lot of people would say, oh, yeah, well, Hulk will show them he'll work with Kidman. But respectfully, and I don't mean for this to sound shitty, I'm just trying to be honest, and this is the only way I know to phrase it. Rather than bringing Kidman up to the main events with Hulk Hogan came down to Kidman's level down the card. I think that sort of is the exact opposite of what the internet wrestling community wanted. We wanted to see some of those younger talent get an opportunity to move up the card, not necessarily some of that top talent, quote unquote, coming down. Does that make sense?
I mean, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but you're spot on. But at the end of the day, maybe always try to go down 2 roads. Do I go down the Hollywood route or a sporting route? But there's no way Hulk Hogan in what's the top movie house? A Warner Brothers movie, a Paramount movie, whatever it is.
Marvel.
Marvel. Okay, if Hogan's in a Marvel movie and the lead and all that, and then the next year he comes out on a streaming movie special, just kind of can't compare it. And at this point, with all the water under the bridge that had nothing to do with Hogan and Kidman, the Flair Jarrett title switches, the debacles after debacle of bad creative on Nitro, bad creative on Thunder, bad creative on pay-per-view, the business, guys walking in, guys walking out, just the whole rut of it. By the time they got to Kidman Hogan, there wasn't a chance in hell that Hogan was bringing Kidman up. Now that's hindsight 2020, but that's the real reality. Hogan wasn't going to bring Kidman up regardless.
Guide Dog Manor says, how did Jeff find WCW creative different in his second run than his first? Of course, if we go back to 1996, you were, is he a horseman? Is he not? But at least then I feel like there was a clear leader. There's a clear boss, like the buck stops with Eric Bischoff, for better or worse.
It was.
In this run, by the year 2000, that's not nearly as clear. It's a little muddy, to say the least, no?
And here's kind of where massive difference, and I know you've covered it on this, we've covered it on this podcast and others, but when you had 96, 97, you had the buck stop with Eric, but right under Eric, you had the Taskmaster. You had Kevin Sullivan, and Kevin had his team under him, and you had cruiserweights, and you had tag title stories, and you had Jarrett and Flair horseman stories. And obviously, the NWO was the overriding big picture story, but you had so many other things going on. Second run, it's I'll call it Russo and his team. Then Vince was only there 3 months and out. That's 12 or 13 weeks. I mean, what a clown show when you just kind of look at from, yeah, the day Vince came in to the day the company closed. How many bosses did they have in a year and a half? 3?
It's a lot. I mean, it feels like it was hot potato in this era. Hey, speaking of something else that was hot potato, take a look at this that we got served on social media. It's a photo of the shirt you wore to the ring that night. I guess you took it off and threw it. Lee Oliver says, I have a piece of that night. This is the actual ring worn shirt from Great American Bash 2000. How often do things like this pop up when you're doing appearances and autograph signings where somebody says, hey man, you threw this to the crowd, or hey man, I have your old so-and-so trunks or boots. And I know you hung on to most of that, but this is a cool find that he hung on to it. He framed it up real nice. I mean, it looks fantastic. Chat me up about that. How often does something like this happen?
I don't know. I would love to hear it, Lee. Maybe throw it on X. How did you acquire that? Where did you acquire that? That's cool. I mean, you know me, Conrad. I don't let go of a lot of things, but broken guitar and different folks want that. And but yeah, that's pretty cool. That's actually really cool. So I'd love to hear the story behind that. Just don't see that often in my career. You hear different things, and you obviously with social media, you see it more and more and more. The opportunity to get ring worn gear.
Well, we're going to get the story behind the story next week on Slammiversary 2009. It's King of the Mountain time, baby. Mick Foley is the TNA champion. And we know you're going to be in the King of the Mountain, of course. And so is AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle. Also, we've got Team 3D and Beer Money heating up. King of the Mountain has an X Division match as well. And we got Angelina Love and Tara. We got Shane Douglas coming back and so much more. It's going to be your last match on a TNA pay-per-view until September of 2010. So tune in next week. And if you've got questions for us about Slammiversary 2009, the best place to ask is on our YouTube. That's at myworldpod.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. Jeff and I are going to be doing lots of bonus content that you can't find anywhere else at myworldpod.com. By the way, speaking of bonus content, adfreeshows.com is a place where you can not only get our shows early and ad-free, but bonus content each and every month from all of our great shows, including content you can't hear anywhere else. We've got Lex Express. That's right. We've got Lex Luger here on adfreeshows.com, as well as Kevin Sullivan, Blue Meanie, Nick Patrick, Mike Chioda, and one of my favorites, I'm actually clicking record later today with David Crockett. We do a series called The Book. We go episodically, day by day, show by show, taking a look at the handwritten notes in his brother Jimmy's red book. We'll know what the towns were, what the gates were, what the matches were. And we add some context with the story, so you get a peek under the hood in the professional wrestling business. It's all at adfreeshows.com. More than 100,000 hours of bonus content, including every stage show ever at StarCast. Plus, you get live Q&As and watch-alongs, and you even get to be a part of our live studio audience. Like Coach Rosie wants to know here, Jeff, what was Russo like to deal with on match day at a big pay-per-view? That's a good question. Like on the day of the show, was he a hands-on producer or not so much?
Oh, not match producer, segment producer, promo producer. If it had to do with the storyline, as far as match, no. And specifically, I think our relationship, I would try to, we would collaborate. And I'm just like, I really want to know the story that you want at the end of this. Like coming out of it, going into the TV, what do you want said? And because I know there's, more than a 1, 2, 3. What are we going to tell leading up to it? Just all the kind of intricacies of that. If me and him would have those kind of collaborations, those kind of conversations, it just made for a better, because I think we all are much better if, and the almighty word editor, but I could kind of, if I could get into his brain, like, what do you really want? I'll go try to make it work in ring.
Well, something that I know is going to start working a little better in ring is Jay Lethal on AEW television, because as we were recording, this came across our social media feeds. I want everybody to see the great news. And I know you're a proud daddy today, Jeff. Let's take a look. Cody Angle is all elite. Be sure to catch him tomorrow night on Dynamite. Of course, this weekend it's Rampage and Collision. Well, he has been campaigning. He's got meetings the rest of the week with the TNT and Turner TBS folks. We got to get basketball out of Jay Lethal's way. We got to pave the way for Jay Lethal to get on the winning streak. I know it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Now that the biggest and best draw in the history of Hendersonville, Tennessee, is bringing his talents to Jacksonville, Cody Angle is hashtag all elite. Jeff, that's great news. Congrats to the Codester.
Buddy.
It's a big deal.
Conrad, while we recording, it's very apparent. Dave, shout out. Text me that. We'll have fun with that. Cannot think enough. But I just kind of want to share with you. Hope you can see this. This is a text I received from my man Codester.
Oh, he's catching them.
Buddy, no, he's hyped. He's hyped. He did the job, did the catfish yesterday. He ain't doing it today, guys.
I love it.
Today is the day I don't lose my fish.
I love it. There you go.
Fired up. And Conrad, one other thing. We talked about the watch-alongs.
Yes.
They need to chat offline. Do you know who my moderator host was, who me and him danced through the watch-along?
I received a text message.
Oh, no. Oh, boy.
That was thanking me for the great honor of being able to work with you. And I replied and I said, I heard Tully Blanchard blew him up in 05.
Well,
and folded my arms.
Conrad, when I got done with that Q&A, picked up my phone, text Corey. Corey's my trainer. Corey, without you, never got through this Q&A. I didn't get blown up. Pond Water didn't blow me up at all.
Shout out to Pond Water for not blowing you up, taking it easy on you. And shout out,
all elite.
And shout out to Tully Blanchard. We actually had that ad-free shows graphic up there. I didn't even mention we just debuted a new series with Tully Blanchard called Tully Vision, and we actually talked about
that. I do.
I mean, you want to talk about an old school, dyed-in-the-wool, great professional wrestler and a great mind for the business.
Yep.
And just a great bad guy. And now an all-around great guy. Tully Vision, now available at adfreeshows.com. Jeff, I'm pumped about Slammiversary 09, man. King of the Mountain. This is your deal.
Real quick on Tully. You know what a lot of people forget about Tully? Is that he's second generation.
Yeah. His dad owned a territory. And here's the thing that people forget.
That's fascinating.
Do you realize that he got his dad's promotion is on USA Network?
Oh, no, that story
predates it all. And I guess, according to the legend, and we're going to talk about this, I think Scott Casey dumped some number 2 on Bobby Jagger's head. USA takes them off the air. They slide Vince in the spot, and the national expansion begins. But without Vince having USA, everything looks different. If he didn't have USA, he would have never let go of TBS. Like, everything looks a lot different. We're going to discuss that and a lot more with Tully.
Ad freeze is the best value because you love this business. You talk about the story behind the story. Without Joe Blanchard
getting USA, wrestling is different.
Where would the business be at today?
What would Vince have done?
It's a fascinating story.
It's a really fun what if, and I don't think Joe Blanchard gets his credit, gets his flowers. We're going to be talking about that a lot with Tully. Join in on the conversation. Be a part of this. Adfreeshows.com is where you can join us. And as we mentioned, over 100,000 hours of bonus content. You can't possibly dig through it all at adfreeshows.com. And next week, Slammiversary 09 is on deck. Ask your questions now on the community page at myworldpod.com. And yes, when the series Who Killed WCW is over, you're going to hear from Double J. In the meantime, find him on Wednesdays on AEW, on Saturdays on AEW, and every chance you can at shoesbaseball.com. Jeff, did we cover it all? Is there anything else?
Nope. Headed to AAA, pal. Me and my man, Simon. Appreciate you,
this
boys.
weekend. Triple Mania on deck. We'll see you guys there. We'll see you next week right here in my world.
Hey guys, Eric Bischoff here. Now, if you need cash without the controversy, the team at SaveWithConrad.com can help. But don't take my word for it.
Hi, my name is Richard Smith. I'm from Moss Point, Mississippi. One of my friends at work said I just been refinancing and my interest rate was 9%, and he said he got his for 2.3. So I said, well, maybe I should try. Got a hold of Diane. She kept in touch the whole entire time. We owned 2 houses, and we rented one out, and my renter quit paying, so we gave it back to the mortgage company. And because we did that, we had to wait 3 years for an FHA loan to go back through. The one thing that Conrad said on his podcast was, we'll never tell you no. We might say, not now, this is what we need to do, and we'll make sure we get it done. Well, prime example, 3 years. And when they say no money out of pocket, there's no money out of pocket. They figure it out. But like, she was so quick that, don't worry about this, I got this first. That's what impressed me the most. My name is Richard Smith, and I saved $700 a month with SaveWithConrad.com.
And unlike the dirt sheets, these reviews don't lie. With over 1,000 5-star reviews, find out for yourself how much Conrad and his team can save you by checking out SaveWithConrad.com and do it today.
NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com.